it's Cara. Welcome to another video. This is my October wrap up. So October was Sims-A-Thon round 2, which is the readathon that I host. Most of our activity this month was on Twitter, and a bit on Instagram. So definitely go check out both our Twitter and Instagram for kind of updates for what was happening throughout the month. For all of Sims-A-Thon, I collected 100 points, which I am really excited about. Sharky had the idea to call them lifestyle reward points, and I love that. So I collected 100 lifestyle reward points through reading all these books I'm going to talk to you about today. I did read a lot of poetry, listened to quite a few audiobooks, and I had a pretty good reading month, especially considering the last couple of months where I was a bit slumpy. I definitely beat the slump. It did help that my work's basically been on shutdown for a month, so I had a lot of spare time on my hands because I was only working a few hours every day. So there's a lot here to get through, and I'll try and do a bit of a review for each of them. So let's get started. We'll start off with some poetry because there was quite a lot of it that I read. I kind of went on a poetry binge. So to start off with, I read both Milk and Honey and The Sun and Her Flowers by Ruby Kaur. I wasn't the hugest fan. I don't think I like Ruby Kaur's poetry as a whole, though The Sun and Her Flowers I would say is a little bit better than Milk and Honey, and that was mainly because it felt cohesive throughout. I think these are described as like Instagram poetry, where they're meant to be like teeny little snippets of like an Instagram post. And yeah, I get that. And for Milk and Honey, I think it really limited the cohesiveness of the work as a whole, whereas The Sun and Her Flowers kind of at least held together a bit more. There were some poems I personally really liked, and the artwork was cool, but it wasn't my fave. I just didn't feel super connected to it. I also read To Make Monsters Out of Girls and To Drink Coffee with a Ghost, which is a duology by Amanda Lovelace, and I enjoyed these. I think these really had a strong cohesive story, which is something I could say about all of Amanda Lovelace's poetry, and these collections were really good in my opinion. Still short form modern poetry, which I don't think is my absolute fave, but I liked these a lot more than the Ruby Kaur ones. I also read the whole, I can't remember the name of the trilogy, but The Princess Saves Herself in this one, The Witch Doesn't Burn in this one, and The Mermaid Finds Her Voice in this one. I also really liked all three of those. Again, I thought all of Amanda Lovelace's were more cohesive and told an overall arcing story, which I really appreciated. The thematic planning around them was more solid to me, and I really enjoyed them. But I still wouldn't say modern poetry was my absolute fave, but also poetry is not my absolute fave, so I also listened to an audiobook this month that I don't have a physical copy for, so we'll talk about that quickly before I start pulling out the physical books. And that is Jinx by Meg Cabot. This was a reread to complete one of the challenges, and I enjoyed it. I think I actually appreciated it a little bit more on reread than I did originally, but this is a classic, like almost like a 90s teen, like not horror but like dramatic movie, which I think a lot of early Meg Cabot felt like a 90s teen movie, and I really feel that about Jinx. But it's really fun and witchy vibes, and it was very silly and entertaining, but I think it is a little bit dated. So if you like Meg Cabot, definitely check out Jinx. I think it's one of the stronger, especially more like fantasy style ones she's done, though still The Mediator is like my favorite series. Now let's get on to the books I have physical copies of. To start off the month, I was already in the middle of, I believe, though maybe I started right at the start of the month, A Map of Days by Ransom Riggs. This has been on my shelf for a while, and it is so not floppy that the spine is like so bent up. This is the 4th book in the Miss Peregrine series, and honestly I think maybe one of the stronger ones. I think plot wise it was a bit stronger than the original trilogy, which was something I always struggled with. They were always so slow moving, but I feel like this one was quite stronger in that department, though it did take a good while to kick off. It has a slow start, but once things are happening, it went really fast. And overall, I had a good time. I definitely will pick up the next one, which I think is A Conference of Birds. I think. I'm excited. It comes out soon. Another book I read and actually really enjoyed, which I was, it was a 5-star predict, but I was getting hesitant there closer to the end. And that is The Ruin of Kings. This was a 5-star predict fantasy, and I ended up really, really loving it. I think it would be like a 4.75, 5 stars. This is an adult high fantasy. We follow Kieran, who, it's kind of like a Chosen One story, but I think he's the chosen dark one, but it's like that's told to you, but then you gotta figure out how it all applies. It's a lot about prophecy. It is very complicated, and it's told from 3 points of view. Kieran is in prison, and he's telling his story to someone who is also telling her point of view of the story, and they're kind of telling 2 different timelines of his story. And then we also follow a third party who's providing commentary, and I personally really enjoyed it. It is somewhat hard to keep track because it cuts backwards and forwards from the timeline, but I think that's really necessary to build the suspense for certain key moments. Like, for a long time, be like, why do these need to be told parallel to each other, these 2 timelines? But then you get to the end and it makes sense. And I honestly really loved it. I also loved the footnotes. I'm a footnotes fan, and the footnotes in this were great. The second one in this is just come out, and I can't wait to pick it up because I really, really enjoyed this. And for a high fantasy, I absolutely flew through it. For like a 550 page high fantasy. Another book I'm pretty sure I was already reading at the start of October, like I was partway through because my reading slump. We have Arch Enemies by Marissa Meyer. This is the sequel to Renegades, and I enjoyed this, though I think it did suffer from second book slump. It was just a bit slower, not as much happened, and I believe this was originally meant to be a duology and got pushed out to 3 books, and I think you can tell. I can't wait to read book 3, which has just come out, I think. But this definitely ambled along for a bit. This series is a superhero series following Nova and Adrian, and Adrian's like the son of superheroes, and Nova is the niece of like the head supervillain that are kind of like underground, and she's masquerading as a renegade or superhero to try and infiltrate them. I did really enjoy this, though again it had a super slow start and definitely suffers from a second book slump. An absolute surprise this month, I listened on audiobook to The Word is Murder by Anthony Horowitz, which is the first in, currently there's 2, but I don't know if it's going to be like a full series. So this is the twistiest procedural, like, it's not a thriller, it's like a mystery, I guess. Like detective mystery that I've read in a while. So we follow the author, Anthony Horowitz, as he's doing his research for this book. He essentially gets approached by a cop who says, you're gonna help me, I'm gonna solve this murder and you're gonna write about it, essentially. And the case is of this woman who plans her own funeral and then dies the same day, strangled in her home. And so we're following the author, and as he goes about trying to help the detective, but also a lot of drama about the book world, and he's working on a movie with Spielberg and Peter Jackson, I think it was Tintin, and all kinds of stuff. And it's just super entertaining, and that very like meta quality. Like, I'm sure it's fiction, as if this actually happened, but the way Anthony Horowitz could like layer himself into the story was so good, and I was absolutely entertained. I can't wait to read, bless you, I can't wait to read the second book. I already have the audiobook out from my library. I'm going to be reading it in November, which I forgot to talk about in my TBR, but oh well, I never talk about audiobooks in my TBR. So yeah, I loved this, and the audiobook narration was great. Oh, hi Trixie. What's she doing? She's hiding. Next I read Cry's War by Nina Varela. I was actually, I wanted to love this so much. This is a female android human romance, and it's kind of like a dystopian robotic kind of future. And we follow Cryer, who's an like android kind of thing. They're called autome, but so they're essentially like clockwork kind of creatures. And then Ayla, who is a human, and they're like enemies to lovers romance. I struggled with this, sadly. Like, I don't think it's the worst, but I wanted it to be like a 5 out of 5 blown away stars, and it wasn't. It was like an average 3.85, 4 stars. The prose was nice, but the pacing I found a bit weird. We switched between both points of view, and I kind of like their relationship developed in fits and bursts that I didn't quite connect with. I think I just really struggled to connect with the characters overall, so I didn't find their relationship particularly believable. And the world building was weird to me for some reason. I can't place my finger on why this didn't work for me, but something was just really lacking that meant it was just average when I wanted it to be amazing. This is definitely a, like, the hype caused problems for me. But it is absolutely a stunning cover, and I will probably read book 2 because I definitely want to see where the series goes. I think the ending was probably stronger than anything else. Another book that had a strong ending, which will probably lead me to continue on with the series, but maybe was not the best installment. We have There Will Come a Darkness. This is another like 4-star, 3.5, 4-star read. We follow a cast of characters. This is another like prophecy misconstruing kind of story. And I did like the twists and turns. I do think some characters were more developed than others, and that was to its detriment, but I really liked the magic system and the world building as a whole, and I am very excited to see where it goes from here, because again, I think the ending was the best part of this book, so it's like a 4 stars. A book that's been causing a lot of drama on the booktubes and Twitter is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Maheron. This is a very quick, I guess, enemies to lovers witch hunter story. They end up married, and it's enemies to lovers romance. So we follow Lou and Reed. Lou's a witch and Reed's a witch hunter. It's very drama full. It's meant to be set in France, and I do think it's very anachronistic. If the language especially just doesn't make sense. It's random French words thrown in, but the vernacular in English is otherwise very modern and not of the time period. It is also very white. Just saying. But overall I thought it was fun and enjoyable, though I can definitely understand a lot of the critique for this. I just had a good time reading it. I don't think it was super special. I think it's like a 3.5 stars, but I had a good time with it, so I think I might pick up book 2. I'm really interested to see where it goes in book 2. I listened to Neverworld Wake this month by Marisha Pessl. This is my second Marisha Pessl book. I have read Night Film. And this follows a group of teenagers who have a near-death experience and get stuck in this time loop where they have to vote every night for who is going to live, and only one person is going to live and the rest are all going to die. So it's them all kind of like figuring out what happened. There was a friend of theirs who died, and they're all trying to figure out how they're all connected to that. This was super fascinating. It's pretty short. It's only like just over 300 pages, and it is fascinating, but I think a little predictable. I do really like the way the wake, so the like cycling days, was handled, and that's always a good trope. So overall I really enjoyed this. I would recommend it, though I think it is very different from Night Film. If you come straight off that, I don't think you'd like this. I've read 95% of His Hideous Heart. I did DNF one of the stories in this because it was not good. I was not having a good time with it, which was what was it called? The Fall of the Bank of Usher. It was just so long and I didn't understand what was happening and I was bored, so I didn't read that. But I did read every other original story in this. This is an Edgar Allan Poe retelling collection. Overall, I really enjoyed it. There were some stories I absolutely adored, but like most collections, I think they on average get like a 3.5 stars from me, and this one's no exception. If you like Edgar Allan Poe, you would enjoy this. The original stories of the inspired ones are also included. So if you are not super familiar with Poe like me, there is the originals to read and compare, which I definitely did. Then I read House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig. I really enjoyed this. This is a standalone, maybe historical fantasy horror story. It's a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling with also some Poe elements. Like the main character's name is Annalee and she has a sister called Ligeia, and there was another sister that like also was named after a Poe character, Lenore. There was also a Lenore. So it's definitely got that Poe inspiration. An eerie, lovely 12 Dancing Princesses retelling full of ghosts and gods and a fascinating waterfront world. And I'm reading it from behind my fingers. So it is definitely spooky, and I'm glad I read it during the spooky month. It does have a probably insta-love cheesy romance, and I think some of the end plot twists were a bit out of nowhere, but I don't know, I find that a lot with kind of like horror-y elements. I'm always like, you pulled that out of your ass. I don't know. I did have a good time reading it. The atmosphere was amazing. I would definitely recommend it for that alone, though I don't think it's a like blazing 5-star, but I don't think this ever could have been for me. It's like a 4-star. A book that was an instant 5-star from the moment I started reading it is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is an adult fantasy, kind of like an urban fantasy. We follow Alex, who sees ghosts, and she's attending Yale because they kind of like hired her to join Yale to run the secret society that like oversees all the other secret societies doing magic, and she's like there to make sure it all goes smoothly. I've heard some critiques of this saying it was too complicated and you didn't learn enough about the societies early on. I personally loved the amount that was revealed at each stage. I thought it was perfect. This is definitely dark and gritty. And definitely an adult book, so definitely keep that in mind because that's been all wishy-washy. But this definitely reminds me of like An Unkindness of Magicians and Magic for Liars. If you like those kind of books, I think you would really love this. I had a fantastic time reading it. I loved Alex as a character. I loved the way the magic system worked. I was absolutely fascinated with it. And the ending was amazing. April found it a little predictable. April from Aprilius Maximus, we were reading this together, we were buddy reading this, and she found the ending a little predictable, but I personally really enjoyed the ending. I don't mind knowing what's gonna happen, so long as it's delivered in a great way, and I loved the ending. I absolutely adored this book. Much more than any other Leigh Bardugo I've read for that matter, because I didn't love Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom the way other people did. I also read The Bone Houses this month by Emily Lloyd-Jones, which is my third Emily Lloyd-Jones. I loved this. This was so good. It's a Welsh-inspired fantasy where the dead kind of like come to life. It's like a zombie story. They're called the Bone Houses, these zombies. They regularly walk the woods, but they've kind of started coming into town. And what's her name? Rin? Yes. Rin, Aderin, and Ellis, who is a map maker, kind of go on a mission to try and make the dead stay dead. And honestly, I loved this. It was so much fun. The romance was really well developed. It wasn't like overdone or cheesy. And the mystery and plot was fantastic. I do think, what was I gonna say? Oh, it has amazing disability representation in my opinion. Though I obviously can't talk that much on that. But it talks a lot about physical disability and chronic pain, which I think people will really appreciate. I thought it was done really well. but definitely check out some Own Voices reviews on that. And I loved this so much. It was so good. I temporarily DNF'd The Disturbed Girls Dictionary by Nanika Ramos. I was reading this on audiobook and I was really struggling with the audiobook. I think because this is heavy in slang, so often I missed what was happening and missed meaning because I was trying to interpret the slang. And I really struggle listening to audiobooks on normal speed because I get bored, but then this I was like trying to drop it slower and slower so I could try and catch things, and it just was becoming complicated. So I ended up DNFing it for now, but I'm going to pop it back on my shelf and pick it up again later in physical copy, so look out for this again in the future. Then I read Tunnel of Bones, sorry, by Victoria Schwab. This is the sequel to City of Ghosts. And I really enjoyed this. I actually liked this better than the first one, I will say. I just think the plot overall was a bit more succinct and meaningful. So this series follows Cassidy, whose parents are ghost hunters, and they believe ghosts exist but don't see them, and she sees ghosts and has a best friend who is a ghost. And her parents have a TV show and they're kind of going around the world filming for this TV show. So some was set in the Paris catacombs and I loved it. It was so good. I do think this middle grade can be hit or miss depending on like how broad reaching it is for an adult. When you're an adult audience, some of them are really broad reaching and are really meaningful regardless of age, and some of them are like more specific to age. And I think this series is one that you would get the most out of if you were the target audience, obviously. But I do think it was really fun. So if you have kids in the like 10 to 12, 8 to 12 age group, they would love this. And then I read A Treason of Thorns by Laura E. Weymouth. This is a standalone fantasy following Violet and her house called Burley, which is like a living, breathing magic house. This ended up being like I would say a generous 3 stars. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the characters, and I theoretically enjoyed the magic system and the plot, but there was something really holding me back, and I think it's just not what I expected it to be. And there were a lot of leaps taken with the magic system that I just didn't quite get behind. I don't know why this didn't work for me again, but it was strange. It was really weird. But honestly, this cover is absolutely stunning. And I recommend you maybe give it a try if you're into that. It's yeah, very weird. I think there were just some plot decisions. Oh, that's right, there were plot decisions where characters would make choices and I'd be like, why are you making that choice? The emotional dominoes weren't lining up very well for this, is what I talked about in my vlog, where I just felt like it didn't quite make sense sometimes. And the final novel I read in October, was Caster by Elsie Chapman. I finished this on the plane on my conference trip. And this is an urban kind of dystopian fantasy following a magic system where most people have like leftover magic. I was going to call it residual magic. It's called leftover magic, where they can do little spells, but some people are casters of full magic where they can do bigger spells, but it costs them and the earth. And our main character, Aza, is a full magic caster, and so was her sister, and then her sister died, so she's kind of on a mission to figure out what happened to her sister. I really enjoyed this, but I do think the writing was pretty simple and it meant I had a bit of a hard time connecting to Aza. Again, she sometimes made decisions that I thought were pretty rash, but it is young adult, so that's fine. You can make rash decisions as a teenager, that's fine. Overall, I really enjoyed the world and the way the magic system held consequences, which I really love. And overall, I think it would be like a 4 stars. It was really good. I also read Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell right at the end of the month. It was fine. It was cute. I don't really like supporting Rainbow Rowell. I got it out from my library. Done. And those are all the books I read in the month of October. Thank you so much for watching. If you participate in Sims-A-Thon, link me to your wrap-ups down below. I'd love to see them. And otherwise, catch you next time with another video. Bye!